Sean here. Want to go more in depth with this. I believe it's called the Malanika Puuko. It's a Scandinavian Tommy style Puuko that maybe you've seen in some of my other videos where I showed cutting down a tree, etc., etc. But what a great knife. It's designed by a gentleman by the name of Daniel. He lives in Croatia, but he's been taught by a very high-level finish maker. This is a very finished design. We could see that the construction here, we've got a 52-100 ball bearing steel. Very nice. Pretty much known as the king of carbon steel. And we've got this really nice high Tommy grind. It's not a zero grind. It does have a 22-degree bevel right here. And this back bevel right here is about 17 degrees. The blade steel has been hardened to about 60 HRC. And he puts a phenomenal heat treat on this knife right here. I've done extensive use and testing with it. And what he does is he puts, before he goes through the quenching, he normalizes the steel 3 times. And what that does is it allows for a very, very fine grain structure so that when you do quench it, harden it to form that martensite. It's very, very fine. You don't get any kind of clumps or anything like that that can cause some chipping, etc. After that, he puts a double temper on there, and yes, it's at 60. Very hard steel, but it actually touches up nice and takes an incredibly keen edge. So let's talk more about the construction here. We could see we've got this kind of nice oval shape here. I believe some more traditional finish designs, they kind of have this in more of a teardrop shape, but this is great. It's got a rat tail tang that's been peened on, so we have a peen construction. Beautiful birch bark that's been stacked. We could see that these little black pieces don't actually always line up, but great. Brass bolsters. These have actually been epoxied on. There are also some more traditional camps like to, I believe they bake it in the oven and they let the natural oils from the birch kind of seal the handle. But I believe the epoxy is going to be a little bit more durable. So, very nice. The sheath that comes with, or topi, it's very nice. Backstitch sheath with a dangler. I love the dangler on here. And then it actually has a piece of wood inside here. I'm not sure if we could see. I'll grab a flashlight here. We'll see if we can check this out. And so if we could see in there, we got a piece of wood inside there. And what that does is it prevents you from cutting through this sheath because there's no welt in there. But it's very nice. It actually makes a clicking noise when you bring it in. Let's see if we can hear. Boom! And that's very satisfying. Nicely constructed. I believe he impregnates this back seam with beeswax. Very nice. Really holds that in there. That's not going anywhere. Of course, you do probably have to be a little bit cautious who you hand this knife to. I mean, I wouldn't hand this to somebody who's never pulled a knife out of a sheath like this before without explaining to them, hey, you don't want to samurai draw this thing out and cut the sheath because this knife is that sharp. So let's go ahead and talk more about the performance. This knife takes an incredibly keen edge. I have sharpened it since I've done the testing. And I've actually done more testing with it than you've seen in these videos. I actually like to just go out and nerd out with it. And it's done very, very well. It's held an edge for an incredible amount of time. I've been truly impressed with it, and I've used an extensive amount of knives, but let me show you how sharp this guy is. I'm not sure if you can see this hair with this background. I'll kind of move back and forth. But it's sharp enough to actually just cut this guy in half. Just like that. I'm not sure if you could see, but it actually just split that hair. Just from passing the edge over it. Boom. Incredible. So, I've been truly impressed with this knife right here. I've been kind of on a huge nerd search for a knife that would hold a razor edge for the longest amount of time. And really what that comes down to is 1, steel selection, 2, the heat treatment, and 3, the geometry. The synergy of these 3 things really makes that performance happen. And this knife is no exception to that. Daniel has seemed to find that perfect synergy between those 3 things, and Wow, just incredible. So let's go ahead and talk more about this performance. I'll go ahead and show you guys kind of how it carves. I got a question about how well it bites compared to a Mora, and technically it doesn't bite as deep as a Mora, which is both a good thing. Some people might consider that a bad thing, but you are able to just get some incredibly fine tinder here, so that you're actually able to get that nice, just one spark, and use this piece like a match. And that's really important when everything is wet. You've been able to use your axe to cut down a piece of standing dead, cut it up, and yeah, you could see there, just incredibly fine. I'm not sure if that'll focus in. Very nice. It just really just bites deeply in the wood. And that's a pretty decent piece of wood right there. And this guy is just going through it like nothing. You can see how smooth that is right there too. Incredible. So we'll move this stuff out of the way. Clean this off. Here we just have a piece of leather right here. I'll just show you how thick that is. Just cut through it like nothing, you know? That just makes me giddy with excitement. I mean, look at that. Like it's a piece of felt. And I mean, that's some thick stuff right there, guys. Alright, we're 7 minutes in. Let's keep talking more about this knife. It really deserves it. It really needs more talk about it. The handle. Let's talk about the handle real quick. The birch bark is very warm, very comfortable. It's very akin to like a really hard cork. That's the best way I can describe it. It will indent with your fingernail. It's not the most durable, but man, is it warm, comfortable, and most of all, beautiful. He's got this great swell here, and it's actually a very long handle. And it fits a large-sized hand very well. I wear a large-sized glove, and just look at that. And the best part is it's comfortable in any position, from chest lever grip, you know, backwards, reverse. I'm not sure if I'll show that on camera very well. Also with the thumb on the spine. Very nice. Now, one thing all you bushcrafters out there are probably curious about is the one thing everybody seems to ask, which is, can you strike a ferrocerium rod with it? And yeah, not very well. Let's try near the tip here. Actually, much better near the tip. So you can use the tip in this function right here with how sharp that is. But back here, not so much. And you know what? With these new fire steels that are out, the 2.0, the striker is so bomb-proof, I'm actually probably never going to use this guy to start my fire. But I can use near the tip, like I said, using this technique right here, which actually works the best. So we'll go ahead and wipe that off there. The other thing I want to talk about is just some of the general maintenance on this knife right here. The brass and blade, the brass will tarnish. You can see that's not as shiny as it could be. And the blade is carbon steel, so it will rust on you. The best thing I found for this knife is this stuff, dun, 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 Flitz, which has a anti-corrosion. This stuff cuts metal incredibly fast, and it's non-toxic, so I can even just use it here on my finger. I probably put too much, but about that much is really all you need. And I guess I can put some back over here and wipe off this excess real quick, guys. But yeah, you just want to go ahead and swirl that stuff in, just like this. Coat the blade, and your fingers can actually be used for all the polishing. You then want to wipe it off with a rag and kind of buff it to a luster. I mean, this is like car wax for your knife, and this knife is a frickin' Ferrari, so you totally need to take great care of this guy. And this stuff will polish up the brass like crazy. So let me go ahead and just wipe this guy off real quick. You guys see just the luster this stuff puts on there, and also just really helps with the corrosion, especially where I live. I live here in the Pacific Northwest. It's a temperate rainforest. It is very wet here most of the time. I mean, I'm not doing any summer camping, guys. Usually it's kind of dry for a few months, but if you actually like to get out there without the crowds, and you got to go in the rain, and you could see just the luster that puts on there, and even that brass right there compared to back over here, you could see. And so you could see how kind of how dingy that is. You put the flits on there, you buff it in really good. You could see it starting to darken really quick. This stuff is cutting metal really quick. I know brass is very soft, but it actually cuts this fast even on just some regular metal. Wipe that guy off. And now you could see, ooh, it's glowing like the frickin' sun. So flits is definitely the way to go with this guy. Let me wipe off the rest here on this beautiful blade. So yeah, I would highly recommend just using the flits on there, on the blade and the brass, to take care of your investment here. Also, he recommends using a boiled linseed oil. Let me just run that by you real quick, what that is. It comes in a can like this at the hardware store. Be careful, it's actually can spontaneously combust. You use a rag on this. It has metallic salts. There's no boiling involved. But what you could do is you can go ahead and coat this right here with your fingers, wash your fingers off, or use a pair of gloves. Put some metallic salts on there. Do not put it here on the blade. It'll actually rust the blade, the metallic salts. So use that on the handle, and that would help seal the handle. Linseed oil is probably one of the best finishes you can put on there because it's very good for hand working tools, prevents blisters. You don't want to put any kind of shellac or anything on here, or lacquer. For the sheath, what I like to use is this stuff right here. It's called Obenauf's, and it's used for boots. And it's basically like beeswax and fat. It melts at body temperature. And so for the sheath, it's nice to just rub this stuff on. Again, this stuff is non-toxic. And you can just rub this in here all over the sheath and kind of darkens it up just a little bit. Helps condition the leather and waterproof it. So it's like the best of both. And so I would wipe that in much more. It smells wonderful too. And so again, that was Obenauf's. So just a few maintenance items for you guys for taking care of this guy. And we're going further in depth here. I also want to talk about some comparable knives. So let's bust these guys out, and you can see a direct size comparison. Here's a knife probably everybody should own. More Companion. Let's get this guy out of the way. And there we are. Also, we can check out, here's another popular version, or popular Scandinavian knife. This is the Hella Viking knife from Norway. So this is kind of cool. We have a Finnish design here, a Swedish design, and a Norwegian design right here. Very nice. Let's talk about, I don't know, direct comparison here. What do you get for this guy? Let's talk about price here real quick. So the Daniel Knives Puuko was $190, and there was about a 2-month wait time. This guy's about $10. This guy's about $100. Is it worth that much? You know what? You have to kind of ask yourself that. I had a friend once talk to me about, why would anybody spend that much on a knife? And it's true. You really have to have kind of more of attention for details. Maybe you could sharpen knives and you could appreciate the finer details of it. And it's kind of like people that do like wine tasting. You know what? It'll all get you freaking drunk. It'll get you drunk. Some people are looking for, a more refined taste. They want the details kind of covered, and that takes more time. That takes more energy put into to develop that kind of product. And that's really what you're getting. You are getting what you pay for when you buy this guy right here. And for the guy who asked me about how well it bites in the wood, here's kind of a piece of wood here. You can see how well it bit inside here. But compared to the Heli and the Morris, these two Morris seem to really split out the wood much better. The problem is you can get more digging in the wood with the Mora if you're not careful, but I think a lot of people like that. With this guy, you can make fine feathers and you can make deep feathers depending on how much pressure you're putting into the cut, which I like the best. And here's just a BK2 for control, and it definitely pierced in much further than the BK2. And the original Mora actually didn't do that well. But you know what? The original Mora does sharpen really good, and this is a great knife for $10. This knife, though, doesn't take as much damage during use as this guy right here. And this one also, they both sharpen to a great edge, but this guy holds an edge much, much longer and doesn't take as much damage. And so there's a skinny on there. And you really can't afford not to have this knife right here. The Hella, you know, this is also a great knife, very robust, but you know what? The fit and finish isn't that great. I'm not sure if you can see, that blade is crooked right there. And then also, we've got a little bit of a crack right there. It just kind of came like that. Great knife, though. They put great heat treat. This is the carbon steel version, laminated carbon. Very thick, robust knife. There's that teardrop shape we were talking about on a more traditional finished knife. You can see that. Ping construction, rat tail tang. But this is a good performing knife, great performing knife for $100. For me, though, I'd probably save up and I'd get this guy right here, which is handmade. Okay, stock removal. Just gorgeous knife. It's not just a looker, it's also a performer. And that's what I really look for in a knife. So we've talked about the price, $190. What kind of warranty is involved with this guy? So I talked to Daniel and he tells me that he will warranty this knife for life. If it fails during any normal use, he's got your back. And what I mean by normal use is, this knife doesn't actually, it's not a batoner. I would not feel comfortable batoning with this knife. I would do some light batoning, but you definitely don't want to be a dumbass when you're batoning with this knife. You don't want to go through a big piece of wood that has knots all over. You could totally tackle a piece of wood that has some straight grain, knot free, just like this knife right here. You know, you're not getting any improvement as far as being able to brutalize your knife. Okay? It's kind of a trade-off for cutting performance when it comes to these knives. These knives will outcut any of those survival knives, like this guy right here, the 162 Bushcrafter, etc. I got a few more, like a Bark River Bravo 1, very beautiful, but it just doesn't perform cutting tasks as well as this guy right here. And that's just the bottom line. So if you're going to be using this knife, and you want something that you can really brutalize a piece of wood, you know what? This right here is only $30. This is an Estwing axe, and you could sharpen this guy to a great edge. 1060 steel, okay, takes a great polish, performs very well. Alright, so you can get one of these guys right here, and then you know what? You could also put one of these in here, and you're not really breaking the weight too much. Little folding saw, the hatchet, which is pretty much indestructible with this full steel construction, and then the Malanika Puuko. So very great.